Gentlemen, what a rough couple of weeks it's been for Mexican soccer players. First, it was Juan Carlos Osorio. Then we had Faustino Asprilla, who called them fracasados. But if you go even back further, it's their own current manager, Tata Martino, who had something very, very interesting to say. I want us to break it down. Quote, the Mexican player is technically very gifted, with many physical qualities and brave when it comes to pushing the game forward. The negative, perhaps, is the lack of ambition and aspiration to get out of the comfort zone that is Mexican soccer. When it comes to making the leap in quality to first-class soccer, the Mexican player does not because he is very comfortable. This was Tata Martino late last month. Mal, I'll start with you. Is Tata Martino wrong?
He's not. He's right. But it's not only the players, it's also the system. It's the Mexican Soccer Federation, because they were also part of a very competitive time in which Mexican soccer would go and play CONMEBOL, and they would go and play Copa America, and they would go and play Copa Libertadores at club level. They don't do it anymore because the comfort zone is CONCACAF, is the CONCACAF Champions League. So it's not only the players, it's also Tata Martino's bosses who were part of the problem. And one of my biggest concerns is I don't think there's one thing that Tata Martino likes about Mexican soccer in the past year. Maybe his salary, and that's why he's probably sticking to the job. But from everything he says, my fear is that he's having second thoughts if he made the right decision to come to a country, to come to a soccer that is not really competitive. That's my biggest fear.
Herc, what do you think? Tata Martino having second doubts? Is that what we're seeing here? If we read between the lines, what he's saying, that the Mexican player doesn't
about not being in a competitive soccer zone? He was in Major League Soccer for a couple of years. I think he would know about not being in a competitive soccer zone. With all due respect to that, he knows what he's signing up for. He knows exactly what Mexico is, what CONCACAF is, what the level of play is. I understand where Mao's going with this, with the directivos, if you will, the ownership groups, and the lack of CONMEBOL participation, whether it be Copa America or whether it be Libertadores, and I agree with it. But I think he's alluding to the fact that these Mexican soccer players don't want to leave because they make so much money in Mexico, because they get treated like kings, because everything's at their beck and call. Because if they go somewhere else, they're going to take a pay cut. They're going to have to struggle. They're going to be just somebody else. They won't be who they are, where they are today. That right there, that mentality is what he's alluding to, and I agree with it. There are very few players like a JJ Macias, a 20-year-old kid who says, I don't want to make money at Chivas. I don't want to make money in Liga MX. I want to go out abroad. I want to go to Europe, and I want to chase my dream. Screw the money. I want that. There are very few players. They're far in between when it comes to Mexican soccer. And now, going back to what Mao said, the lack of CONMEBOL, Copa America, and Libertadores participation, and all you have is CONCACAF for the Champions League, and now the everyday diminishing level of Liga MX, the level is going to suffer. Listen, Tata Martino isn't the first one to say this. Juan Carlos Osorio, do you remember when Juan Carlos Osorio said the national team was going to suffer? When he said the amount of extranjeros.
And before him, Sven-Goran Eriksson said it many years ago as well.
And so forth and so forth. You know, so it's becoming a trend, and they don't care because Mao alluded to it. The root of all this is the money.
Yeah, and I do have a question because after this pandemic, the business of Mexican soccer is not going to be the same. First of all, players are not going to be paid in dollars. They're going to be paid in Mexican pesos. So I wonder, in the next 10 years, if the business is still struggling, that's going to force players to leave that comfort zone and maybe taking deals that they wouldn't have taken this time or 5 to 10 years ago. If those things change, then we might be able to see a change of mentality, and those fears and those concerns that Tata Martino rightfully so shares now, maybe a thing of the past if the business of Mexican soccer still struggles like it is struggling right now.
Herc, you know what I want to get into. Let's name names. Who is he talking about specifically? There are a couple of ideas that come to mind right away. One, Rodolfo Pizarro. And he took the comfort not in Mexico, but of Major League Soccer. The other one is Carlos Vela. I say that because when I hear Tata Martino talk about Vela, I hear frustration, acknowledgement of the talent, desperation to be able to use
Carlos Vela. I mean, Carlos Vela, he's been there, done that, had the discussion with Carlos Vela, and he said himself that case is closed, even though I don't believe it, you don't believe it, Mao doesn't believe it. I think he's talking about.
I sort of believe it.
No,
I sort of believe it.
We're not. We haven't seen the last of Carlos Vela. If Carlos Vela wants to, and that's what Sebi's alluding to, the frustration level right there. But when we talk about Rodolfo Pizarro, that's along the vein because Chicharito Hernandez, because Carlos Vela, these guys are almost towards the end of that road. Rodolfo Pizarro had everything in front of him. But it's also not just his fault if you look at it. I mean, how many times was he not allowed to go? Pachuca, nope, we're going to sell you to Chivas. Chivas, we're going to make you $20 million. You guess what? Monterrey is going to be the one to pay that. Monterrey, high price tag. When he's wanted to go, he's not been let go. It's also the system.
It's not only him. How many players have we spoken to in the past 2 months on Ahora o Nunca? And how many have shared the story that, yes, we had an offer from a second-tier or a mid-tier German team, but Tigres said, no, it's not good enough. Monterrey said, no, it's not good enough money. So again, Tata is right about the players, but it's also the system who is part of this comfort zone that doesn't allow the players to move on to a different type of league if the money isn't right. So that's why I again go to the business side of the equation and ask myself, if the business struggles, then players are going to be forced to move away from Mexican League if money is still their number one priority.
Okay, now, Seb, let me go the opposite end. What about the players who are already in Europe, who have struggled a bit, and at the first hit of struggle have folded? Your Eric Gutierrez, your Chucky Lozano so far, your
you can't say Chucky Lozano's folded.
Carlos Salcedo,
Marco Fabian, yes. Hector Herrera right now is struggling.
Diego Reyes. We can keep going.
Yes, we can keep going.
They left the zona de confort.
But that's the other topic. I mean, are we saying that
he's
the Mexican player, it's really, really so thin in Europe that you have 20, 30 teams always scouting Mexican players? Maybe the question is, does Mexico have enough quality players to make a long career in Europe? Maybe the answer is no. And Tata Martino is overestimating the level of the Mexican player.
There you have it. Tata Martino says Mexican players don't want to leave their comfort zone. Apparently the comfort zone extends far beyond the player when it comes to Mexican football.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.